Chicago, the Together for Students team is focusing on social and emotional learning. What we recognize is a very critical and foundational skill for young people to succeed in academics and in their career or college after leaving school.
You know, we're filming this right before Thanksgiving. So let's imagine we're at our virtual Thanksgiving dinner table and you're seeing your uncle you haven't seen in about a year and a half who's never heard of social emotional learning. What would you tell your uncle? What is that in like plain everyday English?
So we've done social and emotional learning as long as we've been alive as people. It's just not necessarily called that. Social and emotional learning is the process by which young people and adults learn the skills and apply those skills to emotional regulation, relationship building, coping mechanisms for stress, conflict resolution. It's all of the skills that really make us human so that we can interact successfully and peacefully with other people, either in our homes, our classrooms, or extended community. These skills are essential not just for young people in school, but for doing customer service in a career in the future, for dealing with some of the issues as a democratic citizen. But the more important thing is that for children that may not be getting those outside of their home or community, we can use the resources that are available through communities and schools to help the adults that work with those young people, give them explicit opportunities to practice those skills so that they can begin to build them and utilize them more naturally.
You've done some trainings recently with parents in mind and had some interesting insights on how parents manage, you know, working from home, raising kids. Talk a little bit about that and the SEL thread through that.
Well, for anyone that has children at home and is trying to work, you know that now the boundaries around everything has changed. Perhaps you had that morning what's going on conversation on the commute as you were dropping them to school, or in my case, I listened to NPR and that kind of set my day as I went off to work. Now that all happens, you know, in live time in your house. The fact that those boundaries have blurred, I think, has made it difficult for children to know when they can access their parents as parents versus when they can access them as assistants in their education. And employees that are working at home while their children are going to school are also trying to stay on top of their professional obligations while not completely just shutting out their children because they're also still in their home. I think one of the things we're hearing from families that are coping with the length of time that we've been in this remote space is how to maintain those boundaries and recognize their needs, recognize their children's needs, and keep some of the emotions that might flow from one space into the other sort of in check. If I've been in 3 Zoom meetings, I don't necessarily want to take out my screen fatigue on my child if they're bringing me a sincere question. It really does require us to slow down and reflect on how our children are not responsible for the fact that they're in our homes being schooled, and be graceful with some of the needs that they might have and with ourselves, because we're all under a new and unique duress. Gottman does some research and he talks about the positive and negatives that we need to sort of keep moving forward. And for every negative that we hear, we need 5 positives. It's the 5-to-1 ratio. So if my child has done something that I do need to be critical about or help them revisit and reconstruct, I need to be sure I'm feeding them some positives as well, some compliments or praise along the way to balance out that energy.